meeting as of now. Call the meeting to order for the Carver Finance Committee for May 26th, 2020. I want to go on the record as saying I completely screwed up the agenda. I had it listed for May 18th, and then I had the minutes to be read and approved for April 18th, and it was just, I did it wrong. So I apologize. We will get that corrected. Order of business. Yeah, I'm going to record this the same as I did last week's meeting, and it's going on a memory card. And that will go down tomorrow to Area 58. And I talked to Rich Goulart today. They're going to post them both out on YouTube and Area 58 sometime tomorrow when I drop them off. Kelly's taking our meeting minutes, same as she did the last time. And I want to go right into the transfer request. So, Meg, if you want to bring us up to speed, or Rick, if you want to bring us up to speed on this transfer request for the CPA, the CPA Rec Committee.
Rick, do you want me to take that, or you want to take it?
Well, I'll start. You can finish.
Sure.
Speaking to Dave Seidentop this week, he was concerned that he was running behind on the budget for the project. He estimates about a little bit under $40,000. There apparently was an invoice from earlier in the project that he had failed to, for some reason, had gone through the system without him having knowledge of it, which was, again, just an administrative oversight. But now with the finishing the project, and he has just about that amount, close to $35,000 to complete the project with fencing. He's concerned that at this point he doesn't have enough money. So there was a little bit of an oversight earlier in the project, which unfortunately led him to believe that he did have the money that he doesn't have. The amount is just about, I believe, and Meg, you can correct me, I think it's just about $39,000. So he's seeking the funding so he can complete the project. Right now, the only thing is left, the only major piece left is the fencing, and the fencing is ready to go. You know, the problem would be is if he has to essentially halt that at this point, realistically, the area would not be able to be utilized. Anything you'd like to add, Meg?
No, I think that pretty much describes what happened.
Okay. We're not here to place any blame, so any of the members have any questions?
Is there any money from some of the part of the project, you know, some of the equipment that's going in there that could be used to finish the fence?
My understanding is that the equipment has already been prepaid for, so there really isn't the ability to pare back on any of the plans yet. That's one of the questions I did have with Dave, if there's anything that we could, put off into the future. He mentioned that the only thing of any real financial consequence was the fencing, unfortunately.
So is this just a matter of there's not enough money allowed in a specific bucket to pay for the fencing, or is the total scope of the project completed and this is the final leftover amount that needs to be paid to finish the whole project?
Yes, that is correct. You're B. That is correct.
Okay.
All the equipment has been purchased then, you're saying?
Yes, it has been. Yes.
Yeah, all the playground equipment has been purchased. It's installed. The rubberized surface was installed. Most of the project, to my knowledge, on the exterior has been completed. I still had questions about whether the interior work to the bathrooms and things like that had been done, but so I don't know where all the particulars stand with the entire project, but in speaking with folks down there while they're working and what you can see from driving through with your truck, I can see most of it's done, and they're working on some of the protective fencing around the playground itself for fly balls and foul balls and things of that nature. So
I appreciate that observation. That's helpful.
Is this $40,000 just for the playground completion, or is this part of the entire project?
This is the entire project.
All right, so this involves the field work and everything else.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. What's
Is
the
the
pleasure?
fence, is the fence that's near the, I'm just thinking, near the playground area, or is that a high, like a backstop at Fenway Park, you know, that if fly balls, you're saying, come over the fence and hit kids?
I confess that I'm not as familiar with the plan as Dave is, so I can't verify that specifically. Sorry.
So
Curious.
my understanding, Bill, is, and I don't know if you're familiar with that space, but there's a field that's directly behind the police station. That is what we refer to as our rookie field, because the younger kids play on that field. The fence that is between that field and the playground will be roughly, my understanding is, a 10-foot high chain link fence with an 8 or 10-foot net above it. That will be the buffer between the rookie field and the playground. Then on the majors field, which is the field that's been there for, decades, on the right-hand side, the one that's behind the funeral home, that field has an outfield fence, which is about 4 feet high, that remained in place. There's then about a 10 or 15-foot walking path. And then on the opposite side of that walking path, there is another 8-foot chain link fence that'll be built. In addition, the posts are already in for that fence. I just don't think they've installed the chain link yet. In addition to that, over on the border between the softball field, which is behind the 80 Makepeace Center at 3 Carver Square Boulevard, and it borders the softball field, that fencing will be very similar to what's on the rookie field, which is a 10-foot high fence with a 10-foot high net to protect against foul balls from the men's and women's softball fields.
So is the playground, is home plate near the playground, so it's more of a foul ball as opposed to a home run?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So
Yeah.
their home plate for the majors field is quite a distance away from the playground. And that's why there's an 8-foot fence barrier between the playground and that field.
Yeah.
The truth is that in any given season, spring and summer, we have maybe, less than 10 home runs that are hitting that field nowadays. They've changed the balls in both the balls and the bat so that the balls aren't hit as hard as they used to be.
Yeah.
So kids aren't hitting the ball out with the regularity that they did, say, when I was a kid. But to answer your original question, foul balls are more of a concern coming from the rookie field. And that's why they have the 20 feet of protection on that side.
Yeah.
It's more the sharp trajectory that they're worried about than it is the occasional fly ball, if you will. And with that being said, again, where that's a rookie field and it's only used for T-ball, which is 4 and 5-year-olds, and then our rookie league, which is 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, the balls aren't hit with the same speed or intensity or velocity off of that field. And therefore, there isn't a tremendous concern about sharp hit balls, but the fence and the netting that's going to be installed should be sufficient.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Adam, the fencing around the playground is sort of a must-have, right? It's not a nice to have. It's kind of a must-have. So
Yeah, it's an integral part of the project.
Yep. I was curious. Does anyone know the total budget of the playground project? I was curious what percentage this 40,000 makes up. It could be something
Wasn't it 250,000?
very much.
600,000.
The total project was roughly 600,000. The playground itself was like 3. The 2 baseball fields were around 100. Fencing was around, or there was an other category, which I think fencing fell into, that was roughly 100, and then the parking lot was roughly 100. That was the original sort of buckets, if you will, for the CPC budget. Was 100 for the fields, 100 for parking, 300 for the playground, and then roughly 100 for other expenses, which was things like fencing, the bathrooms.
How much for the other?
Lighting, if we got to it. What's that, Pat?
How much for the other? The last bucket?
Roughly 100,000. So it's a total of roughly 600,000 for the project.
Okay.
Is that the playthings the kids, will be playing on in the playground area?
That was part of the playground budget, which was roughly 300,000. I think the final number for CPC was like 286 or something like that for just the playground.
So it does, to me, it seems required at this point, to finish the project, I guess. But Alan, my question is more process related, and I can only use the new guy card so much. I think I've almost been here a year now, but so if we say yes to this, which I think it would make sense, or for me personally to say yes, I just don't have great insight as to what saying yes to this means to something else, saying no to something else. I don't know how it's all. The 40K here makes sense. There wasn't great detail in the request form, but Rick did a nice job sort of expanding, and Adam, I appreciate your color too. I think they need it for this project, but I just need a better sense. Maybe it's more FinCom related as to what else is in the pipeline for these transfer requests. And I don't know if we just handle them, Alan, sort of one at a time as they come in, but I'm curious. We say yes here. Is there something down the line we might be saying no to as a result?
Well, the only thing that there was concern with, and I'll let Meg expand on it, is typically what happens by July 15th is we make up any shortfalls in the budget for the previous year. So the budget balances out. Last year, we did not have a transfer request to balance out the budget. The previous year, we did. It was a small one, but nonetheless, wherever the budget falls short, by July 15th, when we close the books, Meg zeroes everything out. I may not even be saying this right, but that's how I see it. And we transfer whatever is necessary out of the reserve fund. Meg, with this 40,000 gone, this is going to leave us about 26,000 in the reserve. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Now, there are other ways at the end of the year to also transfer funds from other line items if necessary. But that's really only, again, end of the year process between the Selectmen and Finance Committee in the last 2 months of the year. Is that correct, Meg? That's my understanding.
Yeah, it's May 1st to July 15th.
Okay, so if there's other need to cover some minor budget gaps, that other format can be utilized too.
That's correct. And right now we don't have anything. And usually by May, if you've got something that you need to address.
What have we done going forward to, make sure that this doesn't happen again where, there was an invoice that was processed that wasn't accounted for? Like what have we done to fix that problem?
Well, I don't think I'd call it a problem. I think it was just a circumstance and a change in administration, and I'm not trying to take anybody off the hook here, but I don't want to throw the new guy under the bus either. I think that funding was what it was, and I think that you're right. A contract should never have been signed that did not have the funds behind it to back it up. But I also think that the last 4 months of what is really amounted to pandemonium, not using it as an excuse, but I'm using it as somewhat of an excuse. I think that FinCom's been kept out of a lot of the loop. It's not Rick's fault. It's not Meg's fault. I put this back on other administrative personnel, maybe Michael heading out the door, and the select board. Ron Clark could certainly have kept us more up to speed than he has. And that's my personal belief.
Well, if I could just add, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I'd say this is an isolated incident. I wouldn't call this a problem. This is not a systemic problem. I think this is a one-time situation. And I think, as you have stated, it's more, I think, just a matter of transition. There are some things that can be lost in transition. And I think if we kind of chalk it up to that, because I think that's more accurate than suggesting we actually have any kind of a problem here.
I don't think we have a problem here either, other than that simple communication won't solve. But I think a lot of this, just in the transition, there was a lot of stuff that went unnoticed until we ended up at this point. There are no other budget shortfalls that I'm aware of, aside from making up the obvious funding for the new town administrator, and the transfers we had last week for the police and emergency management. Those came back in March before all this stuff started. And then right after those transfer requests came in is when this stuff hit. So that's why it was delayed so long. So that was not unforeseen. It just was bad timing. This You know, we have not gotten updates on this project, so I did not know where we were at budgetarily on that playground, on that whole complex. So when this came to us, when Rick brought this to my attention last week, and he said, I'm not sure what you want to do with this. And I said, well, submit a transfer request. You know, I mean, the playground's got to get finished. It was a hot topic to start with. It caused a tremendous amount of division in this town. And the last thing that I'm going to be responsible for is not putting a fence up. That's just, you know, this is a fight we don't need to have.
It seems like in any building, there's a sequence of events, and that maybe the playground equipment should have been put off until the fencing, which seems like it maybe is more important. In hindsight,
Playground equipment had to be made. That's why you paid
Yeah.
for it. So,
Yeah.
and the playground equipment that's out there is built to extremely stringent specifications. So it's not like we can run down and, you know, go buy a wooden swing set and stick it up in the playground. So, like I said, I don't want to finger point with this. I'm not crazy about this, but I'm certainly not going to say no to it from a resident standpoint. We got to put the fence up. Unless somebody else has a better idea, tell me what it is.
I don't have a better idea, but if I could just, again, request your, your forbearance and see this through. And I also want to thank Adam for his institutional memory here, because some of that obviously isn't something that I was aware of, that level of detail. So I certainly appreciate hearing that too.
I mean, if it was just a piece of equipment or a couple of pieces, that'd be one thing, but the fence seems to be a safety thing. So if that's where it's definitely going.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to approve a transfer of $40,000 to the CPA Rec Complex King Property Playground.
I second.
I have a motion made and seconded to transfer $40,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to the CPA Rec Committee, King Property Playground, for the completion of the playground. Is that all right with you, Kate? That's
Yes.
what it says in here. The
Did you
amount
say
requested
fencing?
will be for the complete, no, it just says for the completion of the playground.
Playground.
That's what's written down. So that's what I'd like to add into that motion, if you are okay with that, Kate.
I'm okay with that.
Any further discussion? I would like a roll call vote, just because this is going to be on video and it's going to be on YouTube and all that other stuff. So if you'd be so kind. Anybody? Start.
Patrick Keneally, I vote in favor of approving.
Yeah, Bill Duggan in favor.
Kate Bansel in favor.
Elizabeth Selgar in favor.
Okay, Pat Maher in favor.
Adam Holmes is going to abstain.
So we have, and Alan Jermaine will vote in favor. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay.
Adam, if you could develop some pitching at a younger age, maybe we don't need the fence.
That's a great point. It's a great point. We're working on it.
That's right.
Meg, I'll get this scanned tonight. It'll be in your inbox.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that's done. Rick, I'll also include, I'll CC you on it.
Thank you.
We'll have it also.
Hmm.
In fact, what I'll actually do is send the approval to everybody so that you all have a copy of it. So that'll make it easy for all of us. So the next thing on my agenda that was incorrectly dated, discussion of the warrant made after being voted on in joint session with the select board on March 3rd. So we have today, you've got a copy of the latest warrant that was sent to me. And we also have the one that we voted on. And before we go any further, Rick, I want to let you know that the organizational chart is still incorrect. The organizational chart that was sent out to all of us today still shows the community living being a complete project, complete. So you may want to have a look at that,
Yes, I will do that tonight.
because I believe that that is not what the plan is now. Am I correct in that? We are not doing the community living?
You are correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's still on there?
All right, I will review that and correct that tonight.
Okay.
Mhm.
Adam, you want to start this off, or do you want me to pick it up, or what would you like me to do?
Yeah, you can start it off. That's fine. And then, if I need to chime in, I will.
All right, I spent some time on the phone with Meg going through both copies. And it looks like the change to Article 3 that we voted on, which included that $99,000 that we had broken out, was going to be made its own article. So we voted on Article 3 unanimously, and we voted on breaking out item G in that article unanimously to make it its own article so that it would give FinCom and the Select Board oversight over that $99,000. Do I have that correct, everybody? Okay. So what happened was, obviously, through no fault of Rick, the previous town administrator took that $99,000 out of the free cash line item and put it in the selectmen's payroll budget for the town administrator. We were notified of that after the fact. So in the current copy of the warrant, you will see, wherever my mouse just went here, you'll see that Article 3, there is no change to Article 3 from the previous Article 3, except for the 99,000 that's missing. And some, what was the other item, Meg? Oh, there was nothing there. That's right. That's right. So Article 3 that FinCom approved, which was Article 3, Part A, B, C, D, E, F, and H, was approved unanimously. Those same items are still what is in Article 3, except H has now become G because they removed the 99,000. So with the permission of this committee, we can really say that we still can support the 10-0 vote on Article 3 because the previous vote excluded the item that they removed. Are you guys with me on that?
Yes.
I think I will be once
They
I know.
haven't moved any other money.
But the
So,
99,000 is out of Article 3, right?
right, it was out of Article 3, but we had voted to make it its own article.
Okay.
So that would have removed it from, if they had done what we asked, that would have removed it from Article 3 so that Article 3, as we just got today, would look exactly the way it does.
Gotcha.
And if they had kept that 99,000 and done what we had asked them to do with it, that would have been Article 4 or whatever article number they gave it. So that being said, we can agree that Article 3 is a FinCom vote of 10-0 because nothing has changed.
Does that 99,000 show up anyplace else in there?
Well, I'm getting to that,
Okay.
which I'm sure will make your day. The original Article 3 that we voted on in the joint meeting, and that's when I mention that we voted on, this is the one we had voted on this in the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. In the original Article 3, I and J were free cash certifications. That's been taken out of Article 3 and put in Article 4. Now, Meg tells me a little while ago that they've removed this Article 4 completely from the warrant. So I'm going to let you take it from there, Meg, and tell us again why.
So, no, well, no, not removed it from the warrants. You're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I'm
what-
sorry. You're right. You're right. It's not removed. We cannot support it. That's what it was.
This article will have to be passed over at town meeting because the story behind this is that we thought we were going to have funds available from the elementary school project, but it's a debt excluded project. And it's accounting from the DOR's perspective because we got premium on the bond. And that premium actually has to be, we were told one thing by our financial advisors, which was that the DOR regulations were changing. And they even gave us a DOR bulletin saying that the DOR regulations were changing, that we could apply that premium to the cost of the elementary school project. But the DOR has since changed what they're telling us on that issue. And so the funds that we thought we were going to be able to use in the elementary school project, we cannot use. And what we thought was going to happen is that we would be able to transfer that 1.26 million from the elementary school to the general fund and get free cash recertified. And as it turns out, that's not the case. We never got free cash recertified. So we cannot act on Article 4 as it is in the warrant now because that funding source does not exist.
Everybody get that?
Meg, do we have an anticipation of what will happen down the road with that, or?
So the 1.26 million that was in the elementary school project, 867,000 of the premium was transferred back to the general fund and will get allocated against the remaining debt for the elementary school project. So on the tax rate, we've talked about Proposition 2.5, that you can't go above Proposition 2.5 or 2.5% of the tax levy, except for capital exclusions, debt exclusions, or overrides. So this elementary school project is a debt exclusion, which is above and beyond the 2.5%. This, by moving that premium back to the general fund, we're reducing the amount that is in the tax levy every year. So it does actually, it helps taxpayers. It will help the taxpayers for the remaining life of the elementary school debt. So that's the 867,000. The 400,000 we're going to be reallocating at the fall town meeting to the police station.
Okay. So it'll essentially, we borrowed it and then we don't need it. Theoretically, we borrowed it, we don't need it, we're giving it back, and now we don't have to pay interest and bond payments on it.
Right. No, I think it's extremely rare for a project to come in under budget. Extremely rare.
Right.
I would agree with that.
It's a good problem to have. We just can't necessarily utilize it in the immediate future the way we would like to because of the way in which it was borrowed.
It's a good problem to have. It just makes things very sticky because when you're talking debt excluded versus a non-debt excluded project, it's not so easy to just apply the remaining balance.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
So that was another instance where Michael thought that was going to be the case. We could do this, and it turned out that we couldn't. So it's going to be in the warrant, but we can't act on it.
But let me just add in there too that wasn't Michael's fault either, because if you go back in time, the financial advisors did produce material from the Department of Revenue saying that we could apply the premium to the cost of the elementary school project, and we even had an article at town meeting to adopt this, and everyone looked at it. Financial advisors, bond counsel, everyone looked at it, the auditors, everyone. So it was very frustrating that the Department of Revenue changed their story after we were certain that that money was available.
That's right. So now we're going to walk up to what was our Article 4 in the joint meeting is now Article 5. And this is where the $99,000 comes into play. And this is also where the $38,000 comes into play. So there's $137,000 that's different from the two budgets. And this is where we get into the comments that you had in the meeting, Adam, about this money being moved from a line item to support, in this case, the town administrator's salary. And while we had no super issue with that, we had a huge issue with the fact that we were told after the fact this was happening. So what is the pleasure of the board with this? We also have a tentative meeting Tuesday night with the select board if we want to go back over this again. And that's entirely up to this committee. I'll be happy.
And Mr. Chairman, in a conversation with Mark Townsend yesterday, you are indeed scheduled to meet with the board if you so choose next week. I will also say that how that $99,000 is treated, I believe is really more of a issue, is not as much of an issue for the Board of Selectmen in terms of how you want to format that. So I think the board would be amenable to however the Finance Committee chooses to deal with that.
The only issue that I have with this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because Adam brought it up, is that the way what will now be Article 5, is that right? Article 5? Yeah. Article 5 now reads, is not the same that we voted on as a group. So that throws a little bit of a wrench into things. The original amount that we voted on was general government budget salaries and expenditures of 2562079. That number is now 2700097. So this is where the 99,000, the 38,000 comes back into play. So in essence, what's presented before us here in this article, which shows Finance Committee approving this 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, is in fact not correct now, because the numbers have been changed and we were never notified of that. Now, it's up to this board whether you want to go through the process of changing those numbers, or you want to just save your time to speak at town meeting, or you want to have the joint meeting with the select board and change the numbers at that time, or just leave it alone. It's entirely up to you guys. I serve at your pleasure also. So, you know, tell me what you'd like me to do and we'll make sure it happens. I am not happy at all.
Alan, just a quick question. So the 99K and the original item G, we were going to take that off the table and then meet jointly once again with the Board of Selectmen.
We were going to take, no, it was going to come out of the original article and become its own article.
Yep.
Originally that 99,000 was sold to us as funding for a new town administrator.
Right.
It's going to be the payment to the Collins Center and then, you know, the first however much time salary. It was going to be worked that way.
Yep.
It's going to include the input of the FinCom. We would have oversight over that money as well as the select board.
Correct. Correct. So there'd be joint oversight, right?
Right.
Of the 99K.
Right. And that got taken right out the window. And the part that I think I'm most irritated about is that we weren't notified about that happening till after it happened. So we go back to, you know, what good is the Finance Committee? I mean, what good is the Finance Committee?
Right.
Does the fact that money has been put someplace different mean that it could be spent for something else, or is it?
It's in the town administrators. And Rick, please, this is nothing to do with, this is not personal, so I don't want you taking this in any kind of a light.
Not to worry, Al.
Okay. This has been,
Thank you.
if you remember a meeting a few months back, there was $30,000 taken out of the propane budget and the heating budget and the telephone budget that was put toward the town administrator's line item. Then we were told after the fact that the 99,000 and the 38,000, because they were not going to expand the community living, was taken out, and that was put in the town administrator's line item. And all of that was there so we could hire the new town administrator, which we would have had no problem with had we been involved in any of that. But we had voted one direction and then we're told after the fact, this is what we're really doing. And we weren't notified of any of it until it was too late. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And essentially, you know, at the crux of the issue is a situation was created where a budget was going to be exceeded pretty substantially by a significant amount. At the time, it was estimated to be between $150,000 to $200,000. There was a new expense that was going to have to come be included in the budget, and there was no way to fund that. When the request was made to take the $99,000 that was freed up from a grant that was given to the fire department, because this $99,000 was originally allocated to the fire department for radios or
The
something,
radio tower.
and they got a grant to pay for it.
Yeah.
So when they got the grant, it meant that $99,000 worth of free cash was now available for some other expense. Well, it could go to offset this added expense of the town administrator salaries, or the executive consultant salary, whatever it was. But when it was originally requested in the March 3rd meeting, it was specifically stated that it would be, like Alan said, for a search for a town administrator and or salary for whatever was left over to help pay for some of the salary of the town administrator that was then on board. So the way I see it is there's essentially two issues. One is, how is that $99,000 accounted for in the town meeting warrant? Physically, is it a allocation of free cash and therefore a part of Article 3? Or is it part of the quote unquote operating budget in Article 5? My personal opinion is that it's not, and the select board discussed this a little bit at their last meeting, but my personal feeling is that it's not part of the operating budget. And Rick, you can please correct me if this is like standard procedure in every town, but to me, when I look at the operating budget, what I see here are the cost to run the town, the general government budget. It's the cost to run the general town government. It does not include line items that detail how that budget is funded. And this free cash item in Part B of Article 5 speaks to how it's funded. And I think if it was an operating budget issue and it was something that was going to capture funding mechanisms or funding tools, funding streams, then we would talk about every other source of revenue for the town. And we don't here. This is just something that addresses sort of funding the budget. But the other ways in which the budget is funded aren't included. And that's because I don't think funding the budget is part of this particular article or typically part of this article. I think it's something that it's money that's coming from free cash. So the way it is captured in the warrant, to me, isn't accurate or the best representation of what it actually is. Furthermore, somebody looking at this next year that wasn't a member of this town this year isn't going to understand what the purpose of that $99,000 was because of the way it's listed in the town meeting warrant. If you fast forward 18 months from now and you go back and look at the 2020 warrant, you're not going to know why that $99,000 was listed in Article 5. It's not stated, it's not spelled out. And if it was part of Article 3, it would be listed as to what it's specifically being used for. So that's the first issue in my mind. The second issue is what you spoke of, Alan, which is we had a mutually agreed upon process for which this fund, the $99,000 would be reflected in the warrant, but also specifically be part of the decision on how it was spent. That horse has left the barn in the sense that there's no way for us to now be consulted on how that $99,000 is spent. As a member of FinCom, whether I personally have an issue with that or not is somewhat irrelevant. I think the only thing that really matters about that is if town meeting has a problem with it, right? As a member of the finance committee, our job is to be watchdogs for the finances of the town. Town meeting is what gives us that authority or that power. So if we go to town meeting and say, look, we have a problem with the fact that we requested to be part of this decision and then weren't, and town meeting says, yeah, but COVID came and we needed to get a town administrator in the door. So whether you agreed or not, we had to do this. So spending the $99,000 without your input wasn't that big a deal. Well, then we can put our hands up and say, okay, town meeting has decided that's not important. But in my opinion, it behooves us and it makes sense for us to make it clear to town meeting that FinCom asked to be part of that decision, voted unanimously to be part of that decision. And in addition, the select board agreed that we should be part of that decision unanimously, 5-0. Right. But then after the fact, made the decision to spend that money without our input. It's not meant to throw anyone under the bus, but it protects the integrity of the FinCom if the public is aware of that. And at the same time, if the public town meeting wants us to back off then we can back off. And it's not something we really need to dig our heels in on. I just think the way it's currently represented in the article, and town meeting not necessarily knowing the reasons why it was done or how it was done, could jeopardize the authority and the integrity of the FinCom going forward.
I think it sets a bad precedent. It's not, and I made this clear today when I spoke with Meg, this has nothing to do with the $99,000. I don't care if it's $99,000, $99, or $9 million. It has everything to do with, this was not what we agreed upon.
Correct.
And that sets the precedent so that the next time something comes up and they decide to not bother telling us, it's going to be, well, we did it before and it was no big deal.
That's right.
So that goes
And-
right to, you know, again, I asked the question, then if that's going to be the case, then what is the function of FinCom?
That's right. And I think it's, if there was any other, and I brought this up before too, so I hate to keep reiterating, but every other committee, department head, department in town, when they need money, they have to ask and request that money, whether it's a transfer request or as part of their budget. When the school committee and the superintendent request an extra $200,000 because they want to hire another administrator, they need that extra funding in their budget. Another board or committee in town has oversight. They have a level of inclusion in that decision.
Right.
Every other board and committee in town has that level of checks and balances. The select board does not. And that's they were able to execute a contract without anyone else's input or oversight. Now, they are elected officials and we put them in those chairs for a reason. And I get all of that, but that is the role of the finance committee at the very core, is to be part of those discussions to make sure that it gives them some separation from the appearance that they have a blank checkbook. And it gives some other board or committee in town oversight, or at least the ability to review the decision before you execute the contract and spend the town's money or the taxpayers' money. That did not happen in this particular case. And so it's hard for me to just say, yeah, you know what, it's fine. We just bypass the role of the FinCom in this particular instance because of a pandemic, when in actuality, at the onset of a pandemic and then in the aftermath of the pandemic, that's when you need to be the most conservative and the most frugal with how you spend the money. You can't let, you know, for whatever, pick whatever phrase you want, but some isolated chaos have the train go off the rails and start making decisions that don't make good financial sense. We demonstrated or discussed at the last meeting that spending $99,000 from free cash on an operating expense is really bad practice. It's not something we like to do. There was some discussion last year about the fact that we might have to do that last year to fund that art teacher that we've discussed now 20 times. And yet when you review the town meeting budget or the town meeting warrant from last year, it was not included as a $41,000 line item for an art teacher. It was part of an O&M, maintenance and supplies budget, because the budget for operating and maintenance shifted from the school committee over to the O&M department. So money was essentially freed up for the school committee that was able to go and fund that teacher. And the money that came from free cash was actually sent to O&M for materials and
We
supplies.
took $21,000 out of the snow budget, I remember.
Yeah.
And that's somewhat common practice, right, Meg, to fund snow and ice, and that's not necessarily something that's an issue.
No, but to your point, we took money out of other places so that it didn't show up in what we were really doing with the money.
That's right.
And that's where it really boils down to. And this is the issue that I have with this whole process. You know, we spent time talking last week about a $4,500 transfer for the emergency management center in the basement of town hall because they needed a phone system that Pilgrim took out because they don't provide it anymore. Well, why bother coming to us? Selectmen could just okay that. They just okayed this. So again, if the selectmen are going to take the place of FinCom, then by all means, we can all stay home and have ice cream sundaes. If they're not, and we're going to do the job, then we should do the job. They can't pick and choose when it's convenient to tell the finance committee. That's my opinion.
Do they have is there an explanation of why they did this?
Yeah, there was COVID and they had to hire a town administrator.
So they,
Yeah, and I think we'll probably get some clarification, Bill, at the June 2nd meeting, but based on the dialogue that took place, so they voted on Article 5. The select board voted on Article 5, not at their last meeting, but at the meeting prior to that.
Right.
So it was a meeting in late April, I think, or early May, that they actually voted on Article 5, and there was zero discussion. They discussed Article 5 for 60 seconds, and barely mentioned the $99,000. It was mentioned as something that was part of Article 5. And that was at the meeting in early May. But at their last meeting, when Rick presented or discussed with them the letter that we had sent requesting the meeting and those things of that nature, they did discuss the history. Ron Clark elaborated a little bit on his recollection of the history from the March 3rd meeting, but they didn't seem to have a good recollection of the depth of the conversation that we had and the level of oversight that was requested and agreed upon by both FinCom and Select Board. So we might get more clarification on that at the June 2nd meeting.
can this be changed back to the way it was when we voted on it? Or can,
No.
So that would be my long-term hope, honestly, and I have that's my personal hope. I don't know that this body would agree, but my personal hope would be that this $99,000 from free cash is removed from Part 5 in Article B. If it's not added back to Article 3, it's included as some other article as part of an allocation of free cash. And my concern is this. Right now, Part B is requesting the town share of the budget to be $10,542,346. Our longstanding, now, basically universally adopted principle is that we do not increase the amount of articles at town meeting. So that is our practice. That is our precedence. We don't like to increase the article amounts at town meeting. It's against, my understanding, it's against the town meeting bylaws that we implemented as a town meeting. So as it currently stands, if we go to town meeting with the article as written, bring it up to town meeting and say to town meeting, hey, we don't think this free cash should be included in Article 5. By taking out that $99,000, you're actually increasing the dollar amount in Article 5 from the $10,542,000 to the $10,641,000 that's listed above it. So if we were to ask town meeting to remove that $99,000, we're in essence violating our town meeting bylaw, which is why I think it's very dangerous to leave it in here the way it is on the warrant and for a town meeting, because we essentially can't remove it. It's not an option once we get to town meeting.
which one of the
That's my
figures,
concern.
which one of the figures are, going to be voted on, because you get one and then you subtract the 99 and you get the second one.
We're gonna have the town share of the budget. They're gonna accept that 99,000 from free cash.
But that's
Why is
subtracted out of
in-
the total budget thing.
Why is there no explanation on the warrant for what the 99,000 is for? Why does it just say from free cash?
I can't answer that question. I didn't prepare this. You want to weigh in on any of this?
I don't put together the descriptions for the warrant. I just do the numbers. But I think Alan, I mean, you're taking notes on all of this because I think it would be right. I mean, I think it would be helpful if we got a list of the concerns of the finance committee so that we can address them. Because probably, I mean, the changing the description would be, and I don't think that this is the larger issue, but if the description is what's bothering you, that we can change easily enough, because I could talk to Elaine about that, but I don't think that that's really the issue that you're getting at either. Because I mean, the 99,000, and I mean, if you,
What you call it.
right. I mean, I think the only way you would really know, and I know this, and Alan and I talked about it, we know where the 99,000 is, because if you look at the older version of the budget, you see that general government budget is what increased. And even there, you wouldn't know where it went exactly. But I mean, but on the other side of it too, if this issue was not involved, we don't normally know, well, we don't know based on the face of the warrant what's in each of these categories other than the budget document itself, which you guys reviewed during budget season.
Right. And I think if you take the town administrator salary completely out of the discussion and said, hey, you know, we just realized we need, you know, $100,000 worth of new computer equipment for town hall, and went to town meeting with a request for that out of the free cash allocation, you know, the free cash article. Hey, we need $100,000 for new computers. Given the current climate, I would venture to guess that some of those things wouldn't get funded. And by doing it this way, you're completely bypassing the ability to make that decision.
Well, I mean,
You're
one
not-
thing I'll add though, two things. One is a question. Did you guys see the revised budget with the change to the town administrator salary?
I'm looking at it right now on the appendix.
Yeah.
491, 398, that still hasn't been broken out into a separate line item. How many times do we need to ask that to get done?
Well,
I'm not directing this at you, Meg.
yeah. No, but I mean, on Appendix E doesn't break out the details of salary lines at all. It only has, for each department, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Finance Department, it only has salaries and expenses. I think I will tell you then, did I create new accounts in the general ledger system? Yes, I've done that already. So it's in the general ledger system. You're not going to see it broken out in Appendix E because you don't do that for anyone else. I'm talking about the detailed budget. You guys got a revised version of the detailed budget, correct?
I think we did yes, we did. And I sent that out to everybody.
So I guess the question is you got I think the problem that you're having is that you saw it, but that's not what you voted on during budget season, but you've seen it. So I think that your concern, issue, question is whether you should revote that budget. Is that it?
I don't know that we're looking to revote the budget as much as we're looking to have the selectmen explain to us why they did what they did.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and as far as the description, it is highly unusual to have a funding source in the budget article be free cash. It's highly unusual. So, I mean, I think it probably does stand to reason that maybe there should be further description there.
Well, we've been told that for how long? You can't use free cash to fund an ongoing expense.
Well, Adam's right too. It's in the financial policies at the beginning of the warrant. He is right there.
What do you want to do with this, Adam? You want to bring this up to the select board? You want to vote on this now? You want to vote to take the 99,000 back out or get a better explanation? What's the feeling of the board?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to get everybody's opinion on that. I mean, my personal opinion is that I know how I would vote on a revote for the articles that's currently written. I know how I would vote on both Article 3 and Article 5 as a result of their currently written. And I would change my vote. I would not vote to approve either Article 3 or Article 5 the way they're currently written. In essence, I don't think we as an individual body have control over how this is represented on the warrant. We simply have the ability to vote for or against it. And we can make a request of the select board on how it should be written. So I don't think, go ahead.
What's your problem with Article 3? Because nothing's changed out of that except the 99,000 that was going to be broken out into a separate line by itself anyway.
Yeah, so if they're not gonna, so again, the main reason behind breaking the $99,000 out of Article 3, item G, and giving it its own article was because it was going to be handled differently than the other free cash items.
That's correct.
Meaning we were going to have oversight.
Right.
So theoretically, that ship has already sailed. They don't want our insight and our oversight on whether they should execute, or how they should spend that money. That's a decision they made on their own. So it essentially negates the necessity to have its own article because now it's going to be handled like all the other free cash items.
That's right.
We could choose to vote it as an individual line item for or against and vote it as a separate line item. But in essence, now it can be included just like every other item that's in Article 3 as part of the free cash allocation. And then we could, as a board, could decide to vote on it separate from the other items.
So you want to put 99,000 back into Article 3?
Which is why essentially right now, if you were to ask me, I would vote against Article 3 because I think the $99,000 should be included in Article 3 and it should be listed as a free cash allocation just like every other free cash allocation is. There's no reason to have it listed as anything different, and no justifiable reason that I can think of why it should be listed as anything separate. So the 99 should come
Yeah.
out of Article 5. It should go into Article 3, listed as one of the items in Article 3. Since we no longer have the ability to provide input on whether that should be spent or not, there's really no need to separate it as its own article.
So we can put it back into Article 3 as a line item to be transferred into the town administrator's budget. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, similar to how it was
I
listed
think so.
before, as town hall restructuring and additional hours or something like that was the way it was originally described.
Put it back the way it was originally described, but not make it its own article.
Right. And then
I
we, as a
agree.
FinCom, can decide whether we want to vote on them as a group, A through H, or A through G, and then take H as a separate vote. Because again, I think there's something to be said for the fact that that $99,000 should not have been spent without anyone's oversight. So we, as a FinCom mayor, I personally may or may not support the decision to expense that $99,000. If every other committee in town, if they didn't have the ability to spend on their own, would have to find the $99,000 in their respective budgets. If the school committee went out and tomorrow hired another superintendent or another assistant superintendent and executed a contract for $150,000 for a second superintendent, they would have to find that $150,000 in their budget. They would not just be able to unilaterally decide, we are taking $150,000 from free cash and we're going to spend it on this. That's essentially what's happened here. Same with the police station, with the police department or anyone else. They don't have the ability to unilaterally just spend money and take it from free cash and then ask town meeting to approve it. So that's what happened here. So I personally, as a member of the finance committee, given how it transpired, I don't know if I can back that specific line item in the allocation of free cash without a really good explanation as to why it was done. That makes me feel comfortable. And personally, that would be the way I present it to the citizens of this town at town meeting.
I think that's, I actually like that. If they still end up with the 99,000, it still goes into the selectmen's budget for the town administrator. But it puts all it puts them on notice, and it brings us back to the standing that we need to be at, so that they can't go behind and do what they want to do after the fact.
Meg, I have a question. I absolutely agree, Adam. I think it needs to go back into Article 3. But when I'm looking at the numbers, if you were looking at your balance sheet of the free cash total, wouldn't you want all of the free cash in the same article that's coming up?
I
I
mean,
mean,
for
or is it
me,
always spread?
for me personally, as a finance person, I would say yes, because finance people we're very detailed. We like to have things a very specific way. I mean, can I make it work this way? I can make it work this way, but do I prefer it the other way? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I would think so too, because I mean, the way we had it before was $1,355,000 was coming out of free cash. Now, if you look at it today, it only looks like $1,256,000 is coming out of the free cash. So then you'd have to jump to another article to find
Yeah.
the full balance.
Yeah, right. No,
Things would
exactly.
blend
Exactly.
together.
Exactly.
Anybody else?
I agree also that it needs to be put back into Article 3, it has, with an explanation, so that we know in 5 years what happened, not just 99,000 from free cash into our operation budget.
I want to eliminate the precedent, so.
Yeah, I just don't, I'm not sure why Article 5, which speaks to an operating budget, is including a funding mechanism for that budget. There's nothing in Article 5 that speaks to how it's funded.
And I don't like how
That's not the purpose of it. And with it included as a negative like that, if we take it to town meeting this way, we cannot take it out. It's not an option.
No, and I don't like how there's no description of the from free cash in the Article 5.
In Article 3, they're all explained, so you know exactly what you're voting on.
That's right. That's right.
The figures in the new warrant here, I'm just confused, and I'm sort of a layman here, but you've got a total, and then there's the free cash 99,000 is subtracted from it, and then you get another total town share of the budget. I don't understand that math there. I mean, I
Yeah, 'cause
understand the
all-
math, but what it all means.
essentially what you're doing is you're asking the town meeting to approve the town funding $10,542,346. That's all you're asking town meeting to approve, is that 10.5 million. In essence, what you actually need to run the town is 10,641,000. So, but you're not asking the town for that. You're asking town meeting to approve the 10.5.
So we're adding from the bottom up here.
Correct. So
Yeah, this should be the
I-
10,000,006, and the 99 should go over to free cash in Article 3.
Right. So I mean, I would make that motion that we do that. I'm not sure that it's, I guess what I'm struggling with here is that appropriate? Because we don't, as a FinCom, we don't determine how this is.
We can vote to do a recommendation to
We can
change.
make the request.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Request.
So I guess I would do that. I would make a motion that we ask the select board, the finance director, the town administrator, to meet and discuss removing the $99,000 from Article 5, Part B, under the line item from free cash, and move it back into Article 3 as a separate item, in essence, our item H,
But
with
designated-
an appropriate description of
Yes.
what it is and what it's being used for.
I second.
And, okay, then we can go into discussion. So I have a question. Would you then want, when we're done with this, would you then want to vote on Article 3, assuming those changes are made, or do you want to make that vote at the selectmen's meeting?
Yeah, I think we should wait until the selectmen's meeting, because I think depending upon how that conversation goes, it might influence how we would vote, whether we vote on all of Article 3 or Article 3 A to G and then Article 3 item H.
Okay.
Because I think that discussion needs to be had. I think there's, I think that's an important discussion. Because I think that the town meeting's decision on whether they want to allocate free cash to an operating budget is a major decision.
Yes, it is.
And it's a major decision for this committee as well. And then that recommendation to town meeting is a major one. So I don't necessarily think we need to take action on Article 3 so much as make the request that it get changed from Article 5 to Article 3, and then have the discussion with the select board on June 2nd and maybe act that night.
Anybody else? In that case, there's a motion
great
made
to me.
and seconded to remove the $99,000 from Article 5, put it back into Article 3 as item 8 with a full description. And that's to request the select board to make that change.
And what's the full description going to be? The same it was, as it was?
Meg will work out a description with Elaine.
My only question, Alan, and I like this, I like where we're going, but hasn't that money already been spent?
No,
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 it hasn't?
no, this is FY21 money.
Okay.
This
So
is-
they've added a new expense to their budget, but theoretically, Pat, if they've added an expense to their budget that now is a contractual obligation, they might have to make other decisions within their department to fund that contract, whether it's getting rid of copiers or whatever it is, right? You're keeping the lights shut off all day long. They'd have to find the money some other way within their budget to fund that contract if it's not funded through free cash.
Gotcha.
My guess is town meeting is going to put it in free cash. This will have become just a notice to the select board that either you want us to do our job or you don't. And that's really what this boils down to. Obviously, we're going to pay the new town administrator his paycheck. We have a contract. We have a contract with the outgoing town administrator, former town administrator. We're going to honor that contract also. We're not laying anybody off to do that. And we're not going to not water the lawn. So this just puts it back into where it should be in order to have the oversight that we're supposed to have. Select board can tell us to go pound sand. They're not changing it. They have the right to do that. If they want to do that, that's fine. They want to start World War III going into the coming year, I'm okay with that. Let's suit up. I'm fine with that. But we're here to do a job. The job we're here to do, we have a great board that is here to oversee what's going on. We're coming off of this disaster, and we have no idea at this point what the impact's going to be on this town. So I think, it's time to get a handle on this stuff, or if they don't want to let us do that, then they can just run the whole show.
You think that was their motive for doing that? I mean, nobody knows, right?
Well,
Not yet. Not till
They
we
didn't
have
have
a
a
meeting on June
they didn't have a
2nd.
discussion about this particular thing, and someone wrote
Not
it.
at length. Not at
Yeah.
length, no.
Well, if I go back to the March meeting, part of this was, did we agree to take it off to move on that night, or was there true interest in a joint discussion? That I don't.
well,
That I don't know.
I mean, at that point, we had not hired anybody yet. This was to go into the search.
Correct.
We were supposed to be made a part of that, so.
So we can just assume that it was no ulterior motive, and let's move it back to where it should be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to ultimately end up funding, the town administrator. I mean, it just brings it back to where it should be in order to have the discussion that should be had.
Yeah. And then that's what we voted on, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if it's not in Article 3, or if it doesn't have a description, then no one knows what we're voting on for the
Right.
99,000. It's like swept under the rug.
That's it. Anything else? Then I would take we have a motion made and seconded, so all those in favor signify by just saying aye, raise your hand so I can see everybody.
Aye.
Aye.
We got all of us. So we got 6-0.
7-0.
7-0.
7-0.
Jeez, I can't even count tonight either. Okay. So that takes care of that. The other quick discussion I wanted to have is, obviously we have a budget freeze on in town. We have a spending freeze on in town. What is the pleasure of this board concerning the grant applications for FY21? As of right now, I have 2. I have one from Shane Gives Thanks, and I have one from the South Shore Women's Health.
So
Now,
before we get into the grant discussion, do you want to discuss other things in the warrant that we haven't acted on?
they removed it. The one you had a question about is no longer there.
There's Article 7.
Wait a minute.
So yeah, the one that Article 18 they took out. They're going to delay that until the fall.
Right.
But Article 7 we haven't acted upon. That's the Community Preservation Committee report and recommendations. We now have those figures. They're part of the updated warrant.
Not
that was
sure if you
released
can
today.
hear me, but I'm not hearing audio at the moment. I'm gonna
You're not
do
here.
what I can to correct that.
Mhm.
You said you had left the meeting, Richard, and came back in. I let you come back.
Yeah, it says no one has voted on this one.
Correct, because they just got the figures, I think, from CPC for that.
You want to hold this until the
We-
joint meeting, or you want to just do this tonight?
We can do that. We can wait. I just wanted everybody to know that Article 7 we haven't acted on, and Article 9 as well.
Well, we can deal with them now. It'll save time. Tuesday night. Anybody have any problems with Article 7? Any questions?
That's in this new warrant?
Yeah, it's in the new warrant, Article 7. To be honest with you, Adam, I hadn't had a chance to really read through the whole thing. I went looking for 3, 4, 5, and the one that they pulled out.
Right, 18, yep.
Alan, do you want me to jump in on the CPA article?
Yeah, would you?
Yeah, so this was in discussion with Bob Bentley, who's the chair of the CPA. Apparently the Community Preservation Committee does not have any specific projects for this year. So normally you would have an article for projects. They don't have any. So it's just a straightforward allocation of their admin expenses. And then they have an obligatory 10% allocation towards open space, community housing, and historic reserve. So I have a spreadsheet where I've projected a 2% increase in the CPA surcharge from FY20. Department of Revenue is allowing us to project an 11% state match. And so then that's our total revenue. And then we can allocate up to 5% for admin expenses, and then a minimum of 10% towards the other three allocations. That open space is for, what is it? That's for the fields.
The recreation, right?
Yeah. That's the debt payment on that. So it's pretty straightforward. There are no specific projects this year.
Anybody got any other questions?
No, seems pretty
No. Yeah, I appreciate the overview.
cut and dry.
I'll take a motion.
So
Seven.
I'd make a motion to approve Article 7 as presented in the warrant.
I second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Article 7 as written in the warrant. Any further discussion? All those in favor, show of hands, please. Okay. Article 7.
And then Article 9, we have not acted on yet, but the Board of Selectmen have. And that is the amount they're rescinding that's been authorized to be borrowed, but which are no longer needed for the purposes of which they were approved.
This is just
So
this is just cleaning up the books, because whenever you start off with an authorized amount, and then if you never end up issuing it, and at this point the middle high school repairs project is completely done, as is the new elementary school. If you don't rescind that debt, then it affects what you can borrow in the future. So this is directly from our bond council, and it clears up the books.
Makes sense.
Want to deal with a vote on that too?
Sure.
Now, I would make a motion to approve Article 9 as presented in the warrant.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Article 9 as written in the warrant. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
0. Poor Richard is having technical difficulties, he texted me. Are you with us yet? I guess not.
He was out at the Golden Gate Bridge last time, I said.
A fog rolled in and it's
we-
cut off his communication.
Is that it for the warrant?
That is all I have for the warrant. That's all I found.
Okay. So, what's the thoughts on the grant applications? As I said, I think with a spending freeze and people on furlough, with all due respect,
Alan, if we don't go ahead and do them though, can't they still petition the town at town meeting?
no. The
Okay.
article, the money article time has come and gone.
Okay,
So we can still take this up when things loosen up in July or August. We can still review their previous year, which is what we're supposed to do. And then we can take their application for the new year, and just because we don't have them by this time, given what's going on, we can certainly act on it in July or August as things loosen up and as we get a better handle on where we're at. And I have no problem with that. I don't want to see these organizations suffer either. I just think that it's not due diligence right this minute, given where we are with the budget, given where we are with the uncertainty, with everything being where it's at, in order to be handing out,
are they both
agree.
asking for 5,000 each?
Yes. Shane gives thanks, and the South Shore Women's Health Network has both requested that. And I'll be more, and actually I kind of, I want to have them come in and tell us what they did with the money we gave them last year. And I even have no problem with getting the people the other people that got money last year and having them reapply. I'd like to do that when we have an actual public session in an environment where we're not sitting at our desk looking at a computer screen. Because personally, I hate this.
So what would change the atmosphere to allow them to get the 5,000 each? Not that I'm for that, but
Well, we need to unlock the budget. That's right now. There's a budget freeze.
okay.
Actually, I'm sorry. There's a spending freeze. Am I correct on that, Meg?
Spending freeze is good.
Meg left.
Meg's muted.
Kelly's muted. Richard's muted. There's Meg. Meg, we have a spending freeze. Am I right?
We do have a spending freeze, and we're projecting that we're going to have to keep it through the beginning of FY21, just
Okay.
because we still don't know what any of this is going to bring in terms of revenues.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to hold off right now. I mean,
Sure.
everyone is hurting.
Yeah, and I don't want to kill them, but
Yeah, no, I don't either,
we're
but
in a place to give away money when we don't know.
if we have money to give.
That's right. So
You
they have
get what
every
you don't
right.
have.
To answer your question, Beth, they have every right to file a petition for next year and go right
Okay.
around us. And, unfortunately, if they tried to do that, then FinCom's recommendation to town meeting would be to vote no. Because they went around the system. I would like to see them eventually get help this year, and the year's very early, so I'm not concerned about, I'm sure they'll take the money no matter when they get it. So that's where I'm at with that.
So is this something, you would get in touch with each one of those?
Yeah, I'm
groups
gonna
and
reach
let them
out to
know?
them and let them know what's going on, at least the two applicants. In fact, I'll probably stop up at Shane's tomorrow and talk to them and let them just know that we didn't forget about them, but, this whole thing. I'm sure they're all gonna be having tales of woe, and I hate to have that be the case, but I just don't think it's responsible for us to.
Everybody else is hurting.
Well, I don't think it's responsible to grant money when we have a spending freeze. And we have people that are on furlough, so the town can save some revenue. I just think it's the wrong thing to do. So is everybody okay with that theory?
I am.
I am,
Yep,
yes.
yes.
How about the minutes from the 4/18/2020 meeting? Oh my God, I can't believe.
518 now.
I can't believe I got these dates so screwed up. How about 5/18?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from 5/18 as written.
I second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes for May 18th, 2020. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Get those up on the website with the right date on them. Any other comments from the committee?
So, Alan, just to confirm, we are on for June 2nd, and are we expecting the full
I'm going
board?
to notify the chairman of the select board as soon as we close out this meeting tonight that the meeting has voted to join them in their June 2nd meeting, and I'll give them a rundown on what we just passed for a request.
Hey, Alan, do you know how many people can join a Zoom meeting?
We can go up to 500.
Oh, okay, never mind.
I think you'd have very little tiny pictures on the screen though. I'm not sure the thumbnails would work, but yeah, on the paid accounts, it's 500. Kelly? Hello, Kelly? Kelly?
Hey, Alan, I'm here.
Just checking to make sure you didn't fall out of your chair or something.
No, not yet.
It is important. You got the wording correct on the motion and the request?
I did, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then that's all I think we have. Pat Maha, you've been very quiet tonight. That worries me.
I
I'm taking the night off. I'll make up for it, don't worry.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. Everybody else doing okay so far? We're good?
Yep.
Then Kate, you can go at it.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I second.
Here we go. You little
Bill's got it.
straw there, Beth. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any further
That's an easy one.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And I am going to stop recording.